everyone. It is Synergy and Multifamily Growth and Mindset Talks today. Here presenting the Brandon Rush. He is a multifamily and commercial real estate focused agent, investor based out of Connecticut. So, anyone in Connecticut, you might want to connect.
Yeah,
Gonna
absolutely.
someone right today. And I just want to start by allowing you to first just give us a glimpse of who you are.
Yeah, sure. So Brandon Rush, Shahira said, I am originally from Queens, New York, actually. So I met Shahira at the Long Island RIA. We connected, and but taking it back to my story, New York, born and raised Queens, and then moved out to Connecticut. Mid-age, not mid-age, but in my 20s. That's not mid-age, but in my 20s, and worked a technology background from there. And I'll kind of fast forward and got into real estate investing. I don't know if that's one of the questions now or later, but I'll wait to get the next question. But got into real estate investing through house hacking. That's how I started probably 4 years ago now. Since then, became full-time broker 2 years ago now full-time, specializing in multifamily and commercial property. And right now, all I do is do well by my clients and have fun in life. And that's kind of the two primary goals. And yeah.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing. And
Absolutely.
I did want to start off by asking a bit about your background, especially how you got started into real estate. So you said you started by house hacking. Can you give us a little glimpse of like what was the initial thought behind house hacking?
Yeah, of course, it was COVID time, and there's a lot of time to think, rethink life and what's going on. I owned a single family in Connecticut as well prior to for about 6 years. So we kind of lived the life, and we were young, and it's just like it just didn't make sense. Something never clicked about me owning a house because it's expensive, and it was really making no money for us. And then I never knew what it was. I mean, we had a bedroom on the second floor that was never used, and I told my wife like it just seems like wasted space. Can we just get a roommate? And it just, at the time, it seemed weird because we didn't know anything about real estate investing. But now that I think about it, I was in the right mindset. But long story short, we, bigger pockets, the thing, big rich dad, poor dad. We went through those motions, and then we learned a lot. And we said, you know what? I think it's time for a change. The first step is decreasing our expenses. So how do we do that? Paid off the cars, got rid of any kind of debt, and then moved into a three-family, Central Connecticut, New Britain, Connecticut. And that was the reason why we did it, to lower our expenses. And, we had no mortgage and life was good, and, kind of took a lot of stresses away.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that was quite a time to reflect. And a lot of everyone's journey to start out by educating ourselves and really just going into the beginnings of financial literacy. And that's
Yeah,
something that there's obviously a huge gap in the education system. So you
absolutely.
mentioned you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Were
Yes.
there any other books that really like came out to you that kind of was like life changing?
Oh, the book that sparked it all, or even before it, believe it or not, is Joanna Gaines and who the HGTV couple down in Texas. Joanna Gaines. They had a book called I forgot what it was, but it was a book that was written by the husband of the Gaines family, and he just talked about buying multi-family or single families on a block one by one, and that just clicked in my head. I'm like, dude, if this guy can do it, and he had no money, I'm sure I'm a very smart person. I can figure, been a very successful person. I could figure it out. And that kind of sparked the interest in terms of real estate investing. And then from there, so that was really the kickoff. And then Rich Dad Poor Dad kind of solidified things for a time. And then, there was a number of books after that. Now it's more growth mindset books like, 10X is easier than 2X, Who Not How, things along those lines are kind of what I'm getting into now. Now it's not so much about, the financial part. It's more about just growing my mindset to kind of expand my opportunities that I may not see in front of me.
Absolutely. I think one of the most underrated things that this generation, especially the younger generations, are growing into are books. There are
Yeah.
so many books out there. It's so easy or with like audiobooks now too to be able to grasp more.
Yeah.
I myself am now getting into audiobooks. I was just telling my partner Eric, I downloaded the Libby app. The Libby app is just the library. It's access to all these libraries. And I'm like,
Yep.
read audiobooks. Um,
Absolutely.
but to gear back into what we're here for today, what's really inspired you to specialize in multifamily and in the commercial space, specifically out there in Connecticut?
Honestly, it started with the RIA, our local RIA. I I just, we got interested and we started attending that, they went. And Charles Dobbins, who's like a multifamily syndicator, I don't know if you guys know him, but he has a program for multifamily syndication and training courses. But he came and spoke one time, and I'm a numbers person, so he started talking about cap rates and what it means and what it means, what a cap rate means in terms of multipliers and things like that. And my mind was blown. And I'm like, all right, forget about the small multifamily stuff. Like that's where I want to be. And I kind of from that day, I kind of knew I wanted to get into commercial multifamily, 5+ unit multifamily, for the simple fact of the multiplier, of cap rate and increase in NOI and what it could eventually turn into. And it's like this is a no brainer, and I love it, and I want to go after it. So that was really it, to be honest.
Awesome. So you did have like a turning point there. Now you mentioned before you're also an active investor, right? So how do you use being an active investor to help you benefit your clients? Because you know both sides.
Yeah. That's a good question. So my current portfolio that I hold physically is a couple of small multis. So we've only been investing for 4 years now. In those 4 years, we purchased 3 small multis, and we actually invested in 2 syndications as well. Where was I going with that? The experience, I would say, comes honestly a lot from both sides. The small multis, even though they're small, you still learn a lot. It's just on a smaller scale of operations, such as tenant management, CapEx management, all the things that come with it. It's just, we got lucky because we did it in a smaller scale and we kind of learned quick versus someone who might have jumped into a 20 unit for their first property, not knowing a lot of headaches that can come out of it. So through that, I'm definitely able to educate my smaller investors, those who are buying 2 to 4 units. It's like a no brainer. I'm like, core things you need to watch out for, make sure you got reserves in the bank, make sure, X, Y, and Z, things like that. And then on a larger scale, I learned a lot of that from my syndications. So being able to sit down on presentations and also listening to the reports that come in quarterly, that teaches me about things they're doing to improve the property. And then I can also kind of translate all those reports into when I'm speaking to clients, when we're looking at OMs on properties or T12s on properties. I'm able to kind of help them identify like, hey, it seems like something's wrong in the last 3 months at T12, is it something you should consider? More so on the new investor side. A lot of my seasoned investors, they're groups, they're not just individuals. So they kind of have underwriting people for that stuff. But my people who are sole investors, I'm able to kind of speak to a lot of the different components of acquiring multifamily based on the syndication and the small multifamily experience.
It seems like it really actually it helps significantly to be able to see both sides.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now you said you were a numbers guy. So how did that start out? Is that from your background?
Yeah, so I always loved numbers. I'm a math person. I'm one of those don't ask me an equation, but I'm one of those you can give me a number and then I can kind of what is X times X? I probably can spit it off pretty quickly. But I worked in IT before as well, so I was very numbers driven. I worked in networking, so it was a lot of zeros and ones and equations to get to certain things. At this point, I don't remember what it was, but I've always been a math driven person, a numbers driven person. So that's kind of honestly where the background came from. Just naturally, it was no like love for math or anything. It just I just lucked out and was good at numbers, to be honest.
Well, I will say one thing. I was more of a history person.
Ooh,
So
what
that's
did that turn into? I'm curious. What is a history background turn you into? Probably research, I'd imagine. No?
research and a lot of social work because that's where I
Okay.
ended up. A lot of
There you
social
go.
work.
Absolutely.
But so could you share with us how, and this is just based on what I know. So let me just first kind of premise this with Brandon and his wife. And I'm so sorry. What is your wife's name again?
Catherine.
Catherine, Brandon and Catherine. They have traveled a lot. And I want to ask you, how has your passion for traveling and experiencing different cultures really influenced your approach in real estate? Because I imagine seeing the differences in cultures has to translate somewhat in what you do now.
Yeah, I would say so. I would say the biggest thing I learned from traveling, and just not to brag, but just to kind of give people an idea of the travels that we do. That's one of the biggest whys in my life, is to travel and experience the entire world as much as possible before I'm gone. So we've traveled. We just came back from Brazil in South America 2 weeks ago. We were there for 2 weeks. Before that we were in Spain, Africa, China. So we've been a little bit everywhere. We still have so many places to go. But what I learned is that the way we operate here is not the same as everywhere else. It's kind of what I get from traveling the world, and it humbles you a bit, and then you get a wider perspective of. It makes me accept different clients of different shapes and sizes and thought processes, and because you never know where they come, how they operate. I mean, the first time I went to China, I mean, to be honest, it was crazy over there. It was like, but now I have an understanding for the culture and how they live. If I were to work with an Asian client that was from China or whatnot, but it just honestly teaches me to pause before I what's the term, judge someone, a client that I haven't worked with if they approach me a certain way, because it just may be how they are, how their culture is. So I would say that's probably, it's taught me patience with clients traveling the world, to kind of accept how people live. Because if you're only from America, if you only seen America, you're only used to the way we operate. We're very fast and want it now, but some cultures are very slow. Some cultures are very fast. They're much faster than us. And but I just learned to balance it all and just kind of be patient and listen and understand them.
What would you say is your favorite place that you visited so far?
I gotta say Ecuador. It was our first place we went internationally, but it was just so chilled and peaceful and quiet and cheap and good. And I love the outdoors and mountainy. I just love quiet places. Connecticut is too busy for me, so this is like not long lived here. New York was too much. I went down there last Sunday to visit my grandfather, and I'm like, it is so painful to go down there.
Oh, and I was going to say, for me, I feel like Connecticut is quite quiet.
You know what? It is. I like, honestly, the further up you go in the Northeast, it gets quieter, and yeah, it's definitely a whole different perspective when you go from New York to Connecticut. It is much more peaceful out here. But yeah, it's still depending on where you're at. It. Once you get back close to New York, then the crazies come out, and you're almost back in the city.
Well, I love that you said that Ecuador is your favorite place to visit. My father is from Ecuador, so that was a great. That was like, you got points with me there.
What city, province, town is he from? I'm just curious.
He is from Cuenca, so one of the major cities. I know, like, when you land and it's Guayaquil, and it's like about an hour flight away from Guayaquil.
Okay.
Very quiet city, very peaceful. At least from
Yeah.
2 years ago. Now things are getting a little rough out there, but I hope that they'll get back to the origins of what they truly are. People there are genuinely kind.
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit of, like, how do you keep up with the market trends and changes, right? Multifamily changes so much.
Yeah, it's honestly just through my network, to be honest. I network pretty heavily and I stay in contact with different, resources of all shapes and sizes and trades. Everything from syndicators, other syndicators, people like yourself. I go to lots of meetups, local lenders, national lenders, reports from, big brokerages like, Markets and Millichap, some of the bigger brokerages who share information from, countrywide statistics, things like that. And a lot of it is just getting out there in the field locally, just getting out there and talking to other investors and having conversations at meetings, at their properties. So it's just a lot. It's part of my business is honestly conversations. That's really what being an agent broker is just having lots of conversations. And through those conversations, it's not always me calling a client, but it's me calling people that are working in the multifamily and commercial field. So just through all those conversations, you kind of hear commonalities between what people are saying. It's like, oh, cap rate. So how, cap rate's this. So you kind of know, all right, well, I understand, Connecticut's cap rates are kind of still low for where they should be, things like that. And I'm hearing things about people in, the Sunbelt market. So where, rents are kind of, hitting a certain thing. And you hear a lot of those conversations. So it's like, that's where I get it from, is just through people like yourself, through just networking like crazy.
Yeah, I got to meet you at the Long Island RIA, and
Yeah.
I will say I really loved your presentation. So how is that for you? Was that the first time that you were able to get in front of a crowd and present, or is that something that you've been doing quite some time now?
That's a good question. So I was a DJ back in college. So I've always been like, I was actually a host, a radio station manager, and I had my own show. So to a degree, I've always kind of been public speaking, but for real estate, it's becoming more recent, I would say. I didn't really speak in the before when I spoke, it was people like they contact me through Bigger Pockets, would have phone calls. That was like almost an everyday thing. But finally started getting approached by a few, investors, people who own REITs, things like that, saying, "Hey, do you want to speak about multifamily?" And so it's relatively newer. I'm enjoying it too. I was like, I'd love to share the experiences I have, because a lot of times, you don't really get the time from someone who's kind of done some of these things to, talk to them, and I still have that time now to give to people. So it's exciting to be able to do that for now. Someday I may not have that time, but I do now.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. Um, the other part of that question I wanted to kind of expand upon was, and something that I think I haven't seen before, and I will say Brandon was the first person who did this, is that you sent a video clip of yourself after we met and kind of
Oh
just
yeah.
highlighted our conversation. What made you think that, or what came, like, how did that process of thought come to, like, oh, this is going to be a different way of like connecting with people? Because that was honestly for me, I was like, I told Erica, like, wow, that's new, that's amazing.
I'm a copy and paste kind of person. I'm very like who, not how, and like that's probably one of those books, if you haven't read it, one of those up there with Rich Dad Poor Dad. Even though I'm original, I'm with a lot of my thoughts and processes. I'm also much of a copier. I see people do certain things and I copy it, and it's like they're doing it well. I'm like, I don't need to recreate the wheel. I'm not trying to do, I'm not trying to make, I'm a very simple person. I'm not trying to make my life complex. So a guy one day I met at a meetup, I got home and I looked at my inbox and it's like, "Hey Brandon, it was nice to meet you." I'm like, "Oh crap." I'm like, I am doing that. And from that day, it was it. It was that simple. I'm like, that is the smartest thing ever. I'm doing that. And I've been doing it ever since. And it's opened a lot of doors and conversations. I mean, it's the littlest thing, but it was like, it works and it's crazy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm telling you, like, 2 seconds later, I went to Eric's like, "You have to see this. Like, you have to see this." And I was like, I have to do that. I got to do
Yes,
that now. So that's
absolutely.
something I'm going to copy from you and start
Take it.
implementing in my life.
Absolutely. Take it. Take it.
So tell me, what are some notable successes or stories, from your experience from clients?
Yeah, I would say two I could bring that come to mind are like, one of my first deals closing with a newer investor, kind of going through that and being able to educate them, you know, with newer investors, the biggest thing is educating. I find that educate them on is expectations of what it takes to get into small, more so on the small multifamily side. Educating them on expectations, like you're not going to make in this market unless you find something that's true value add. You're not going to make money for 2 to 3 years. Like, just listen to me. And they're like, "Oh, that's not." I'm like, "I'm not trying to like ruin it for you. I get it. I'm just making money on some of my stuff. You're going to go through the same thing, and other things like how to manage tenants, things like that." And the best part of it is when you close, it's never a major surprise to them. They're always, not always, but many times they come back and say, "Hey, you know what? You were right." Like, but it's good because it sets the tone for when they start landlording and they don't freaking want to quit after 6 months because the roof shot or the furnace went out and I told them to have reserves in the bank, things like that. So I would say the feedback that I've received from some of my newer investors is always like gets me super excited because I'm able to hand off what I learned through my painful experiences when I started because it was I had a painful start. I bought 3 properties in like a year when I first started, and don't do that unless you like unless you know what you're doing. On the other side, my other success I would say is probably my largest property date I've sold so far was a 42 unit property in Hartford, Connecticut. It was I helped the client acquire it, but that was my true like first off market like, "Hey Brandon, I know a seller who has a 42 unit. Do you have a buyer?" And then we linked it up. We used a larger like commercial lender, so it was like official, not like some of these like alternative lenders. Not that there's anything bad with them, but this was like agency debt. Like Freddie Mac came out, did their appraisal, so this was like true like the stuff you see on TV type of deal. And it was really good to go through the experience of seeing what the underwriting, what the standards they look for. I mean, they look for stuff like they were looking at the brick and it was like, you're going to have to repoint that brick and this door, a lot of safety related things I would have never thought about that some lenders, they just disregard. They're just like, "All right, good. Appraisal's done, sold." So I would say that was a big success because I learned a lot just by dealing with the more sophisticated investor, opposed to my like normal, not normal, but my more newer investors. So just that experience is just fun all around, and I learned a lot.
Yeah, I think the greatest part of this experience for myself has been able to learn in every step. And I feel like we are going to continuously learn.
Yeah.
I don't think you ever stop learning in multifamily.
Yeah, no, especially when people involved, because they will keep making you learn every day.
People are very surprising. With that being said, how do you approach your relationships, to ensure that their needs are met, right? Throughout their buying or even their selling process, like how do you maintain a great relationship with people?
I would say setting expectations and maintaining communication are probably the two most important things. With anyone you work with in life, you want to make sure the expectation between how you both operate is aligned, and there's not this complete discrepancy between the way you guys think. So, when it comes to sellers or buyers, a lot of my conversation up front is, the big challenge, not challenge, but the big thing I have now is, with my buyers, like there's a fee involved. And unfortunately, some of the newer ones are like, "What do you mean a buyer's agent? I don't pay a fee for a buyer's agent." And I'm like, "Yeah, you do." And I'm not, I just had this comment somebody just made. I'm like, "What? I'm not one of your willy nilly part time agents. Like, this is what I do full time, and I'm going to work with you to source your property." And so that's one of the expectations. But the other expectation is letting them know if I think it's even possible to help them. If someone approaches me today and says, "Hey, I want to buy a 6 unit for $200,000, and I want to, and I'm just like, all right, do you have cash? You need to close quick, no inspection. No, I'm not. Then I can't help you. It's like I'm not even gonna, fool you into believing you can get that. And so I'm very transparent and honest with them up front, and I set the expectations. And once we do set the expectations, it just makes it easier because you're realistic in what's going to happen, and it was communicated in advance. And the challenges that were going to come were communicated in advance. So that's whether it's small or large. And same thing on the listing side when helping sellers sell. If you're going to list at a high price, these are the risks that we face. We face appraisal issues. We face sitting on the market for 6 months. We face you getting insulting offers. So if you're good with that, we're good. But if that's something you're going to squawk at, then we can't move forward because that's what's going to happen. And I'm very honest and transparent. And I think a lot of the clients value that, and it just makes it a strong relationship because they know I'm not here to just transact and make money and say goodbye, because I want to work with them on the next one, and the next one, and the next one. So it's a long-term thing.
Absolutely. It's so important to kind of like you said, be transparent and already put those expectations in place. Now, you said that there with some sellers, you let them know like if we're gonna put it at a price point, you
Mhm.
make it insulting offers. How do you handle those situations when they're like, well, yeah, sure, we'll do it anyways, but then they get the insulting offers, right? And then you're like, well, here, this is the offers that we got. How do you, or better question, how would you prefer someone submit an offer or like submit that low offer? How would you prefer that to come through?
Usually having not evidence, what's the word? Justification behind it is always good because it helps the seller understand where they're coming from. So I'll talk to the buyers as well. Like I'm very transparent on both sides. Like I'm like, "Hey, dude, a girl, like I know it's high. Submit the offer, give comps, give proof of why you're offering here, show the numbers so I can present to my client and show them that they're a little crazy, and they have to come down a little bit. So I'm very transparent on both sides, and I'm just a very realistic person. Obviously we want to get the highest and best for our sellers, but I also don't want to ruin my reputation as the agent who just lists stuff that can never get sold. And also, I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste my time or buyer's time or anyone else's time by listing something that can't get sold. So, but yeah, that's how I do it. I'm very transparent with the buyers. I don't just sit behind and they submit offers and I just say, "Hey, here you go." Usually it's them giving the justification, and I'm not looking at the bad guy because I already told them like, "Hey, throw this one, two, three into your offer and then present it." And they do that, and I say, "I'm not the bad guy. This is what they gave." And but there does come a certain point where I do, like with my sellers, I give them reports like, "All right, these are what the comps are looking at. We've been on the market for 30 days. My recommendation is we drop it, we drop the price 5%, just to kind of break this certain threshold. If we're at 1,600,000, maybe we want to get to 149 just to break that $1.5 million point, things like that." So yeah.
No, yeah, that sounds great. Because we've obviously in our profession, we've come across where like that never quite doesn't pan out for us. It does not work, and we don't want to be we don't want to insult anyone, but we also have to make sure that we're guarding our investors, right? Like ultimately, we're coming in at least when we're doing a syndication, we're coming in and wanting to make sure that we're able to give the returns that we're projecting. So it's always
Absolutely.
important. It's great to know that there is a better way of approaching that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to drag it on, but speaking from your side, now hearing what you're saying, speaking your side, it's definitely always good to give, especially if it's I wouldn't say lowball offer because that's relative. It could be the right offer and it's just the seller's crazy. But giving justification behind your offer, because it also shows that you're trying. You're not just throwing out a number, and so even showing that, hey, here's a number, here's a reason why we're qualified buyers, here's our experience, like all that. You just never know what's going to come of it, because a lot of times sellers eventually they come around, they get frustrated, circumstances change, and they have to sell. And if they have a trusted offer that's come in, and it's not just an offer, but it has backup behind it, they're going to start asking you questions, or at least trying to negotiate with you a little bit, versus the rest of the crowd who's just an offer that came in with a number. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's good. Good to keep in mind for anyone here who's in syndications, who is putting in offers. Come with the facts, back it up, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Now, a big question that I typically like to ask before we open up the floor and allow people to just kind of jump in is, how did multifamily investing change your life? How did that kind of maybe push you in a different trajectory?
Two things come to mind. I would say it's given me somewhat of a sense of purpose in life, in terms of not just the financial part, but unlocking this thing I've never known about for 20 something years, probably almost 30 something years, and it finally hit me. And being able to now educate much younger people who are like just or in college just getting out, like, hey, if you start this today, like when you're my age, you're gonna be all right, and it's like just being able to kind of educate younger people is really exciting, and seeing them get started, just like you live through them. And it's like, I don't know if that's healthy or not, but I like live through these young people, and I'm like, you are going to be so well off just starting with this house hack, at this age. And just, I'm working with a dude. He's like, I sold him his first multi. Perfect story. I sold him his first multi, and now he's like, Brandon, you were right. He's like, yeah, I'm probably not gonna make any money. He's like, but I do want to do bigger. What's the next step? And I told him about, I think, Michael Blanc's underwriting. He's like, I want to look at syndications. I want to underwrite. I'm a whiz kid like that. So I was like, take Michael Blanc's underwriting course and see how it goes. And he's already like at Atlanta at a conference already underwriting stuff. And like, so I'm like, oh, damn, you moving fast. So it's like, it's exciting to see somebody who's like 19, 20 moving that fast in that space. The other thing I would say is it taught me is patience. It's like real estate investing has taught me patience, because the first year I was in such a rush to get rich and retire, and it didn't happen, but I did learn that now that I'm 4 years in now that I've seen the benefits of owning real estate long term, such as the rent increases, dealing with the CapEx issues, putting good tenants in, and now to be truly being stabilized, it just takes time, and if you think about it in a long-term horizon, it's not to be a 30-year play, but over you just holding a property for 5 years in the right market can be a significant difference in your life. So it's taught me to be patient. Anything that's worth doing, it's going to take time, or anything that, I don't know what the term is, but anything that's going to do good for you is probably going to take some time. So just be patient, ride it out, and it'll be good. So I would say those are the two things.
No, yeah, that's amazing. I actually was hearing a book today, and it said patience is a virtue of the gods.
Yeah.
The trait that they had, right? Because they have ultimate, like, unlimited time. They're immortal, per se.
Mm.
And that makes me kind of think of what you just said right now, where you're like, you're teaching someone who's so much younger,
Yeah.
who they make a simple change or a different option, right? They chose a different path at
Yeah.
that age. By the time that they're our age, they're going to be so much more well off than we could ever be.
Yeah.
And to me, that signifies almost like lengthening your lifespan, right? Because you are essentially living through them by teaching them, and essentially also like lengthening your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
that's good.
I'm gonna go ahead and let anyone who would like to come up and ask Brandon a question to please come up, even if it's just a comment. Yes, Angel, building a legacy. That is a beautiful way of putting that. Thank
Angel,
you.
is that the Angel that I know? I don't know if that's the same Angel. Angel, where are you?
No, it absolutely is.
What's
going
on?
Usually Cat's there with you somewhere in the background.
Oh yeah, she's chilling. She's chilling today. Yes. How are you?
I'm doing all right.
Very good. Good
Struggling
to
with a couple of multifamilies, but yeah.
That's all right.
Actually, one isn't struggling. The other one is like, oh my God. Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
I want to ask a question. What's up, Brandon?
Cisco, how are you? I'm good.
I'm doing all right. First off, man, when you putting down Connecticut, I need your Connecticut card.
Say that one more time.
I need your Connecticut card. You gotta turn it in. But you brought it back when you said New York is wilder than Connecticut when it gets
Oh yeah.
busy. But so what I think you met up with my cousin. I think you did a re-up in Dirt with Eric Hanley and Brian Almeida.
Yep.
Yeah, Brian Almeida is my little cousin.
Oh dang, small world. Yeah.
Yeah, I was supposed to be there, but I was working on a deal. I couldn't be there, so I was like, "Damn it!" That it's funny how it comes around. And when they were telling me about Brandon, I'm like, "I know that name sounds familiar." And now when I saw your face, I'm like, "Yep, definitely is." So, quick question: I know you've been dabbling in with the small to medium multifamily.
Yep.
What is the adverse effects that you've been experiencing in that avenue when it comes to tenant retention, right? With everything that's been going on, the increase of costs when it comes to repairs and everything, what are you seeing on the small scale compared to the big units counts that you had?
I'm sorry. My connection, I think went out. The last 15 seconds you said about the cost. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so the cost of the small scale, right? Because sometimes going into small scale, the cost can be a little bit adverse.
It is.
Is that
I that's a good question. I think it depends on how, and I don't know if this is answering the question correctly, but it's a combination of what's the term, scale, and also buying right. To be honest, like I think the cost comes in when you buy wrong right now, because you can't support the change that are happening so quickly. Like if you buy a 3-family, 4-family property and you have 2 tenants leave, did you factor that in, that vacancy? I think if that's answering the question, I think that's where the cost comes in terms of the vacancy. I mean, sorry, the tenants and moving in. I think a lot of it comes down to the market you're in, knowing the market, and not to speak about only Hartford, Connecticut, but I always warn my clients who come into Connecticut, the first thing they jump is Hartford. Oh, we want to get to Hartford. I'm like, well, are you ready to, have lots of turnover? You have to factor that into. Your vacancy rate is probably going to be friggin' 12. It sounds crazy, but it's going to have to be up there to factor in all the numbers. So I think it's a combination of knowing your market, because also if you're in some of the A-class markets, they're probably not leaving, but it's also a thing of giving good product to your tenants. Because even in the worst markets, not saying Hartford is the worst market, but in your worst markets, tenants are going to pick nicer properties to stay in, and you're going to retain those tenants. But if you're somewhat of a slumlord and you just kind of buy a property, you don't really fix it up, but you expect to get top market rent, you're going to pull in a bad tenant, which is going to result in vacancy in a year later, and then you're going to follow that process. So it's really about just truly value add investing, or truly putting your money into properties. And that's where I say that long-term play comes in. It's like you just got to put the money in, and if you can't get it back immediately, tough luck. But it's going to save you in the long run, because if you try to take shortcuts, you're going to put out money through lots of vacancies, year after year after year. But I think does that answer your question, or?
No, you answer. You're good. You're good. So I was just following up because I know you brought up about being a numbers guy. I'm a numbers guy myself. So
Yeah.
breaking down the numbers and being able to understand, what you can do and what you can't.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to stand on those numbers.
Absolutely. I mean, most times you do. It's like you can't. I mean, it's kind of it's also a part of risk. Sometimes you can't be like. I mean, you can be 100% of numbers. Sometimes you got to kind of take a risk, and a calculated risk, I guess you could say, and hope that you're right. And then worst case, if you're wrong, it's still not going to wipe you out. You just might, maybe lose a few bucks. And I've done that in my last couple of properties, and it's worked. Like example, in my 4-unit I live here in Portland, I paid high for it, and it wasn't the best, but my bet was that, in 3 years, it's a good neighborhood. The building is built well. It doesn't need much rehab. It was really turnkey. And that risk, it worked out fine, so I think it's a combination of numbers and just what's your risk tolerance to deal with certain things.
Correct. No, understood. And that's what I'm saying. It does come down with the numbers, and you just like look at it. Is this something that I really want to jump in and feel that yo-yo effect, right? Am I
Yeah.
gonna want to get out and get back in? Playing double dutch back in the day. You want to get in, get out.
Yep. Yep, absolutely.
Thanks for answering.
Thank you. No problem.
Thank you so much, Francisco, for coming up and asking questions. It's funny. I told Francisco, I'm like, I have someone you can connect to, and look, it's as if you guys
Super
are meant to.
connected. Yeah, I know, and let me take it back. I do love Connecticut. Like Connecticut, I don't want to speak bad on Connecticut. Let me take that back. Like if one of my goals is to like have a house here and then have somewhere in the South, but it's just, I think you stay somewhere long enough, you start to you start to complain.
So let me ask you. I'm gonna ask you another question. What
Yeah.
part of Connecticut you reside in right now?
I'm in Portland, which is like smack dab in the middle of Connecticut, 20 minutes south of Hartford.
Yeah. So you love playing with mountain cats.
With what?
I call them mid Connecticut mountain cats. That's where you see all nature.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I probably can show you. We have like llamas down the street from me. We got some chickens, and it's good. But then we have Middletown right across the bridge, so it's a good mix.
Definitely, I know exactly where you're at because you have your bobcats and all that stuff that crawl through there.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a rattlesnake last year riding a bike, so we have everything.
Yep. It's funny that you went from the concrete jungle to the middle jungle.
I'm trying to go full jungle in the future, man. Oh man, funny.
I feel like I don't know what Connecticut is like at all now. Through that 2 seconds right there, I feel like that was so different than what I thought Connecticut was like.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, yeah, you got to take a trip up here, and I got to show you some of this how we live up here and how we invest and all that good stuff, and yeah.
Absolutely, I definitely will be taking a trip because someone owes me a Alfredo pizza. So, but all right, I did see Angel put in our chat. She did say if you're trying to have an on-site personnel, the magic number is no longer 60 units. It's more like 90 to 100. Deals are just getting skinny everywhere, especially with C-class.
Absolutely. I mean, Connecticut's such a small market. It's like it's hard to find large multifamily out here. You have a lot of sixes and things like that, but we're not a huge metro like things out in Texas and Atlanta, things like that. But we have our fair share. I still believe Connecticut is a solid, fundamental wise, a solid place to invest. There's it's pretty locked in. There's not a ton going on. So if you find something in a good market, it's going to be pretty stable. I don't see a lot happening here. Like some of the other markets, just not a lot of growth happening. So it's kind of just flat.
It soon come to New Haven and Hartford. It's coming up there.
Yeah.
That wave is coming. You see a lot of especially because I work out in the lower Connecticut. I live in Bridgeport.
Okay, yeah.
So, with my primary W-2, I'm typically anywhere from Litchfield County all the way through Fairfield County, out to Westchester County, up to Dutchess, Wappingers. So I'm also in New York area. But over the last 20 years, the wave is starting to go through. It came through Stanford, starting to go through Westport, Norwalk right now. One of the big builders, BLT, they just walked away from a project in Norwalk, which was like supposed to be a 7-year, 5 to 7 year play with 4 phases, and it was supposed to be like almost 400 something units.
Wow.
So they were big in Stanford. They built over, I think they had over 1,000 units built. They built a little metropolis right next to the train station.
Got it.
So it's going in that direction because right now it's starting to come into the Fairfield County, where Fairfield by the train. So anything on the train tracks, that's where they're typically building. And that's where they're looking at really moving the needle on any multifamily big structures. Also in I don't know if you know about Steel Point.
Is that Bridgeport?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They just got approved for 300 and something units right there by the water. and they're also bringing in a soccer stadium and a soccer team.
Wow.
And they're going to be building some more apartment units over there. So that's why I said it's soon come, because New Haven is also doing the exact same thing. I went through there and I saw what they were building over there.
Mhm.
So Hartford typically gets the last end of it, but I think it's coming up that way.
Yeah, I mean in Hartford, I mean already they have some new developments that have gone down already. So I personally see it all over the place. I think it's happening much faster in the Fairfield. Every time I go through Fairfield County, it's like they're just building up everywhere you look. Up here, it's like not as frequent, but there is a significant amount of development going on, redevelopment, ground up development in Central Connecticut as well. Just not as abundantly as down there, but yeah, you're right. I've been in Connecticut for 13 years, and like compared to what it was then to now, like that Norwalk Mall wasn't there. There's that huge apartment complex behind it that wasn't there when I was. So it's like things change really fast in like 13 years since I've been here.
Yeah.
It's rapid pace right now.
Yeah, in your area, I don't see too much going on. I think there's a lot of logistical and political thing. They don't want it in their backyard,
Yep.
but they want everything else. So it's funny, you can't have both. So we'll see how that goes as everything starts moving forward.
Yeah, right here in Portland, they just built a brand new ground up 100+ unit complex within a mile from where I live. So yeah, it's happening.
Yep.
Cool.
Absolutely. It looks like things are coming up though. But
Okay.
thank you so much, Brandon, for taking the time to talk to us here today. And I don't know if anyone else wants to jump up and just either a comment or a question that you have for Brandon, please, you can unmute. But yeah.
Yeah, we hope to connect with you again at the Long Island RIA, Brandon. Look forward
Oh, yeah.
to seeing you again and hopefully attending one of your conversations as well up in Connecticut too. Seems like our family up there is extending, so.
Absolutely. Anytime, for sure.
Thank you guys again for joining us here at Synergy and Multifamily Growth and Mindset Talks. That's what we're about. We just want to provide value and continue growing alongside each and every one of you. Have a great night, everyone.